All right, welcome. Today we're diving deep into something really cool. The pure brain work behind how we organize, well, everything. We're going to break down S.R. Ranganathan's idea plane. Think of it as the invisible first step, the architect's blueprint for any system of knowledge. It all starts here.
So let me just ask you this. Seriously, think about it. If you were handed the job of creating a single logical system for all human knowledge, from astrophysics to ancient poetry, from biology to baking, where would you even begin? It sounds impossible, right? Well, this is the monumental challenge that Ranganathan decided to take on.
And to make sense of it all, he brilliantly broke the entire process into 3 stages, or planes. First, you have the idea plane. That's our focus today. It's the pure abstract blueprint. Only after that's solid do you move to the verbal plane, where you give everything a name. And finally, the notational plane, where you create the codes and symbols, like a library call number. But none of that works without a solid idea.
Okay, so if we're architects, we need tools. In the idea plane, our main tools are called characteristics. Now, a characteristic is just a fancy word for the criteria you use to slice and dice a big universe of stuff into smaller, more manageable piles. But as you'll see, choosing the right characteristics is everything.
Luckily, Ranganathan didn't leave us guessing. He gave us 4 fundamental rules, or canons, for picking good characteristics. You can think of these as quality control checks for our intellectual tools. They are differentiation, relevance, ascertainability, and permanence. Let's quickly unpack each one. First up is the canon of differentiation. Honestly, this is just pure, simple logic. It says your characteristic has to actually, well, divide things. For instance, if you try to classify a group of crows by the characteristic color, and your only option is black, you've achieved nothing. They're all black. It's a useless characteristic because it doesn't create any new groups. Next, we have the canon of relevance. And this one is absolutely crucial. The characteristic has to actually matter for what you're trying to do. Say you're sorting students for an advanced math class. Their previous math scores? Super relevant. Their height? Not so much. You've got to use the right tool for the job.
Then there's the canon of ascertainability. This just means your characteristic has to be something real, objective, and provable. You can't go around classifying people based on something you can't actually determine, like what they were in a previous birth. It has to be concrete, something we can all see and agree on.
And finally, the canon of permanence. Ranganathan had a great, witty way of explaining this one. He said characteristics need to be stable over time. He pointed to Indian politicians of his day who were known for frequently switching parties. He called them Ayaram Gaya Rams. Trying to classify them by their current party would be a total mess, because it was always changing. The characteristic has to stick.
So, we've got our quality-checked tools. We know what makes a good characteristic. Now it's time to actually start building the structure. And in the idea plane, we do this using 2 fundamental building blocks, arrays and chains.
Now this slide is probably the most important one for understanding the whole system. An array is a horizontal set of things that are all on the same level. They're peers. Think of it like laying bricks side by side. Continents, Asia, Africa, Europe, that's a perfect array. A chain, on the other hand, is vertical. It's a hierarchy, moving from the general to the specific. This is like stacking those bricks to build a pillar. World, down to Asia, down to India, and so on.
Of course, you can't just build randomly. You need rules, building codes. For arrays, Ranganathan laid out a few. They have to be exhaustive, which just means you can't leave anything out. They must be exclusive, meaning one item can't be in 2 different spots, and the order you put them in has to be helpful and consistent.
And the building codes for chains are just as straightforward. Decreasing extension simply means you always have to move from the big, broad category down to the smaller, more specific one. And modulation is critical. It means no missing links. You can't just jump from India straight to the city of Amritsar while skipping the state of Punjab. Every step in the chain has to be there.
Okay, our main structure is up. We've got our arrays and our chains. The final step in our blueprint, in the idea plane, is to arrange the rooms, the items inside an array, in an order that makes sense to people. This is what Ranganathan called creating a helpful sequence.
One of the most obvious and useful principles is chronological, or ordering things by time. It's simple, it's predictable. If you're listing the prime ministers of India, arranging them by when they took office is a perfect example of a helpful sequence. Everyone gets it instantly.
Another really powerful principle is spatial contiguity. That's just a smart way of saying arrange things by where they are in space. If you're listing the states of India, a geographical order, like going from north to south, makes perfect intuitive sense. You're basically giving the user a mental map to follow.
So what do you do when there's no obvious timeline or no map to follow? Well, Ranganathan said when all else fails, use the alphabetical principle. It's great for abstract concepts like human emotions. And as the source material cleverly notes, it's also a fantastic way to avoid any political arguments about whose country or state should be listed first. So let's just step back for a second and look at what we've actually built. By following these clear, logical principles, we've gone from a total mess of ideas to a clean, structured architectural plan. This right here is the magic of the idea plane.
And here it is, the completed blueprint. You start by picking the right tools, making sure your characteristics pass the 4 canon tests. Then you build the structure, using those horizontal arrays and vertical chains. And finally, you perfect the layout, using a helpful sequence. What you end up with is a logical, scientific, and objective foundation that you can build any classification system on top of.
But you know, Ranganathan's principles are so much bigger than just libraries. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. How can you use this very same blueprint, this way of thinking about characteristics, hierarchies, and sequences, to bring a little more order to the information chaos in your own life, whether it's for your studies, your job, or anything else?